lighting up the Twitter sphere with his hot takes is the man SwipaCam himself. Follow him on Twitter at SwipaCam. We bring him into the show now, kind enough to give us a few minutes of his time. Cam, what's going on, my man?
Man, we living. What's going on, Nilo? Thanks for having me on today.
Absolutely. Well, you've been all over my Twitter feed all year long. I see you with your videos. You're doing your tweets, going back and forth with Ja Morant every now and again. How did you get on this Jokic hype train? I know you're from Colorado, but this year, man, you've been bringing the heat.
Yeah, so I've been on this since I started the channel December 2020. I think on December 23rd, 2020, that's when I first picked the Nikola Jokic MVP. Obviously ended up winning last year, but this year he comes out the gate. He's playing extremely well. And again, in context, he's carrying a team that doesn't have Michael Porter Jr. went down in the Houston game, which obviously had an injury, but hadn't looked right all season, was shooting around 20% from three. Jamal Murray had been out since April of the last season. But it's just what he had been doing and how he'd been accumulating wins. I think over the first 2 months, the Nuggets were 13-14. But really, if you look at the turn of the year since January, they've been one of the best teams in basketball, bar none. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that Nikola Jokic is doing all-time things on all-time production right now. And again, if you just look at his overall numbers, we have a player in the NBA that's averaging 26.5 points a game, 13.6, 13.7 rebounds a game. He's averaging 8 assists a game with a 66% true shooting. To keep this in context, the only players of that volume in recent history to have that kind of true shooting numbers with that scoring volume will be Kevin Durant in 2018 and then Steph Curry at 2015-16 year that he's had over 400 threes made and one of the greatest offensive performers we've ever seen. So he's literally been all-time this year, and I think, again, if you're just looking at the statistics, advanced analytics, all-time PER leader, box plus minus, he's shattering the all-time box plus minus leader, Raptor, estimated plus minus. You look at all the advanced analytics. I mean, they not just favor Jokic, they heavily favor Jokic, but again, the raw data by itself, it's just been enough to tell the story. So I think comparatively what he's done with the help that he's had, to what other guys like Giannis Antetokounmpo, who I think has been top 2 all season, and then obviously Joel Embiid and Ja Morant and Devin Booker, Jason Tatum, Luka Doncic, whoever you want to put to the table, nobody has done more with less, and also no one is scoring at the volume on the efficiency he is, and he's been an elite defender with 3 game-winning blocks this year. So, again, that's just the start. I can go on for more, but that's really where it all started.
Well, we could tell you watch your hoops. We could tell you you watch your Denver Nuggets basketball as well. And what I want to ask you is, where do you think this narrative switched, right? Because I was on Twitter on Monday talking about should I hedge my Jokic MVP bet, and then this ESPN straw poll comes out, right? And all of a sudden, after the last iteration, now Jokic is in first place by a considerable margin. And I'm looking at odds right now. Jokic is completely flip-top. He's now the minus 210 favorite to win the award. Joel Embiid now the 2-1 dog. Like, what do you think now all of a sudden flipped in the minds of people to, to get people to understand what's happening in front of them here with Jokic's play?
So there's a few sources I want to attribute to that. One, I think that people have been watching what he's done all year. But then again, if you just look at how the Nuggets have played, just say for the month of March, they're 10-5 in the month of March. In that month, Jokic averaged 30 points a game, 13 rebounds a game, and 8 assists a game. Now, let me repeat that because I know some people didn't fully hear that. 30, 13, and 8. So when you look at what he's done in 13 of those performances this year, in that month, he has led the Nuggets in points, rebounds, and assists, and he's literally the only player in the shot clock era to do so. So I think with what he's already done, with the fact that the Nuggets are winning, and they had literally just gotten to the 5th seed. Obviously, Utah beat the Lakers yesterday, so therefore they slide back into the tiebreaker, and now they're back in the 6th seed. But they have been winning. They've won 46 games this season. They are on track. They could possibly win 51 to 50 games this year should they win the rest of their games or go at least 4-1. So to do that without Jamal and then do that without Michael Porter Jr., I think the national narrative flipped because of that. But then the other part of it is there are so many people who are so good at watching basketball, and they know what they're talking about. And I had a Twitter space recently that Richard Jefferson came into. We have some of the best YouTubers, and I know people hear YouTubers and basketball analysts, and they think, well, what do YouTubers have to do with the conversation? Well, YouTubers like Ben Taylor and others, what they do is they compile the data to help tell the story from a non-biased standpoint, meaning like what does the data actually say about what we're watching? And so I think comparing the fact that you have so many people putting out such great content about Nikola Jokic and then the national narrative, honestly, wanting to be on the right side of history when it comes to Nikola Jokic, because I think for so long people have been so hesitant with him because of the fact that he plays in Denver. his play style. He was the 41st overall pick. He wasn't necessarily the media's pick for the next great thing. In similar ways, how Giannis Antetokounmpo is not the media's pick for the next great thing. But the difference is they have both snatched the narrative away by being the best players in the NBA. And I think this season, in the last 6 weeks or so, Jokic has literally snatched the narrative away by playing at an all-time level on all-time efficiency and winning and beating the Milwaukee Bucks, beating the Philadelphia 76ers in the process. So you add all that together, I think it's just really changed the national media conversation surrounding Jokic.
Yeah, I mean, beating Philly in Philly, all big wins. And I mean, just to be able to do it without your second and third best players. I mean, MPJ was here for about a cup of coffee to start the year before he got hurt. Obviously, no Jamal Murray for the entire season. And look, I know that Giannis has to deal with some injuries to his team. Obviously, Joel Embiid loses Ben Simmons. But to me, there has not been a single team or a single player that's had to overcome more adversity this season in regards to having to play with different types of players. You know, Bones Highland, who's a rookie who's stepping up scoring 20 points a night. I think the mountain that Jokic has had to overcome has been a little bit steep as well.
Yeah, and so I think, again, keep it in perspective, you know, the MVP award is not who has done the most with best. So we don't want to narrow the MVP conversation with that. But even if you say, like, hey, he's had decent contributions from his team, again, since Bones Highland has taken over as the sixth man, quote-unquote, for the Denver Nuggets, meaning when he took over the role for Facundo Campazzo, the Nuggets bench has been transformed, as well as with the acquisition of having DeMarcus Cousins coming off at the backup five. And then on top of that, having Austin Rivers and Monte Morris and Bones Highland and Will Barton have really solid guard play over the last couple of months. It's lended itself to the Nuggets being an even better and more effective team, because in basketball, you need to have a very good big. That's very true. You need to have an all-time player, but you need role players to be able to step up and do their job. And if you weren't watching, Bones Highland this last month essentially shot 48, 50, and 80 across the entire month, and he averaged 14 points a game as a rookie. So he has literally been a revelation for the Denver Nuggets, and they wouldn't have won some of those games, including the 76ers game, without Bones Highland stepping up like he did. So it's a lot of people coming together to help Jokic do this, but obviously he's doing the main source of the work by being the MVP. And like I said, you go through a month averaging 30, 13, and 8, you're going to turn a lot of heads.
Yeah, so I'm interested to see how this season shakes out for Denver. It seems like, you know, I'm on agreement with you. I think most of the people that watch basketball on a night-to-night basis understand what Jokic is doing and the importance and what, you know, should result in that as well. But what I want to ask you now is, where are you at with the Nuggets as a whole as the playoffs, you know, are starting to approach here? We're still have this great cloud over with Michael Porter Jr., Jamal Murray. Not sure if they're going to come back, but assuming that the team that we've seen all year is the team they're going to go into the playoffs with no MPJ, no Murray, where do you think this team can go? What do you think their outlook is?
Yeah, so that's the hard part. And I try to explain to people all the time that, you know, people get frustrated maybe with Will Barton or even Aaron Gordon at times or Jeff Green, and they say, well, why aren't these players more consistent? Well, when you're a role player in the NBA, even if you're a well-paid role player, you are a role player because being a star player means you have the ability to be emotionally and physically and mentally consistent game in and game out. So you're not going to be able to rely on players to do that all of the time. But what you hope is that because they're on such a good rhythm, because, again, they're 10-5 in their last 15, they're 16-6 in their last 22 games, you're hoping that when the playoffs come around, right now they're matched up with the Golden State Warriors. There's an opportunity, well, Golden State Warriors, but then obviously falling back into the 60 to Dallas Mavericks. There's an opportunity for the Denver Nuggets to match up with the Dallas Mavericks and or the Golden State Warriors in the playoffs. And, again, if you look at the matchups, they actually favorably have an advantage on the interior versus the Mavericks, where they can actually take advantage of a lot of those matchups. Obviously, Aaron Gordon would have to play stellar defense and being the main defender on Luka Doncic. But then in the other matchup, again, you can't count regular season victories as a deterrent for how playoff success will look like. But the Denver Nuggets were 3-1 versus the Warriors this year, and they were 2-1 versus the Warriors with Steph Curry in the lineup. So if you have your role players that are able to do their job, Nikola Jokic in the playoffs, if he gets one of those matchups, we have already seen Jokic do 33, 11, and 6 last year versus the Portland Trail Blazers. And by the way, the only player in NBA history to average 30, 10, and 5 on 50, 40, 90 shooting. And then we saw him have a 30, 20, 10 game versus the Phoenix Suns last year, one of 3 players in NBA history to do so, with Wilt Chamberlain and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. I guarantee you that this playoff run, if everybody's healthy with this current iteration of the Denver Nuggets, they're going to be able to surprise a lot of people. I do think they can get out of the first round. But again, it's going to be the auxiliary players. It's going to be the role players. Your Monte Morris, your Aaron Gordon, your Will Barton, Bones Highland, DeMarcus Cousins, Bryn Forbes, Austin Rivers, and Michael Green, Jeff Green. It's going to be up to them to provide Nikola Jokic with enough help to help him get through, at least to make it a tight game in the fourth quarter where he's able to use his patented clutch moments in order to take over the game. So they have a real opportunity to at least make it to the second round, if not make it a little bit further.
Yeah, and I mean, at the end of the day, the door has not been shut on Murray and MPJ. It doesn't see like there's not necessarily the light at the end of the tunnel, shining in our faces right now, but there's also that possibility. But I think you hit it right on the head. I mean, we've seen Bones Highland kind of grow up in front of our eyes this year. When Will Barton's playing consistently well, it's a big impact on the team. We talked about the green guys as well. So I think that Denver has the inner workings for a good playoff run. Let me ask you this, the last one here. I have talked about this on my show for weeks now. I don't see any team really outside of the Phoenix Suns in the Western Conference as this daunting opponent, right? You're talking about Golden State. You're talking about Dallas. Obviously, Memphis has been great. Phoenix is the only team that I look at right now at this point in time that I'm like, okay, if Denver's got to go into a 7-game series with that one, it's probably going to be a little tough. What's your just opinion on the state of the Western Conference? Because if Denver can establish some momentum and go on a run, who's to say they can't go all the way?
Yeah, so I think Phoenix is obviously very good. They played very well the other day. They shot Denver Nuggets did almost 50% from three and 60% from the field, and they still lost by 10 points because Phoenix is a machine. They are high execution, high coaching, and high intelligence, and that leads to great success, especially in the fourth quarter when it really matters for Chris Paul and Devin Booker and even Mikal Bridges. So they're a great team. I think that the Memphis Grizzlies actually have a lot to offer. Again, if you look at their record, they're 19-2 without Ja Morant. That's because they have great players in Dillon Brooks and Desmond Bane and Jaren Jackson Jr. They have a lot of pieces that will afford for them to have a great complement of players to facilitate their star, especially when he's not there. So I think Memphis will prevent some issues for people. I think those are the two best teams in the West. But again, all as you know, everything is about playoff risers and fallers. You don't know who's going to be a playoff riser on a lot of these teams until you get to the moment. Ja Morant, we think he's going to be a playoff riser, but he doesn't have the background to show it, but he has the capability. Phoenix, we know they are. Now, Luka Doncic, he has just unluckily had to play against Kawhi Leonard and Paul George in the first round over the last 2 seasons, but he still put up historically great numbers in context of the 14 games he's played. I do think that in every series that the Nuggets go into, the decided advantage they have is that they have the best player in every series. So in the NBA, when you have that ultimate joker, if you would say, that you can put on the table and say that I have this card and there's nothing you can do to do anything about this, then all that matters is, will Jeff Green, will Michael Green, Monte Morris, and Will Barton, can you give us enough help? And can you play enough defense? That way, Jokic is averaging 35, 12, and 10, but that's more than enough for you to get a 6-win series or a 7-win series. And I do believe they have the opportunity. It's going to come down to execution and who is willing and able to be a playoff riser when the time comes.
We shall see how it all shakes out, my man. Where can people follow you on social media and check out your YouTube page before we get you out of here?
Yeah, absolutely. You follow me at SwipaCam on YouTube. Go ahead and hit subscribe, follow the channel. You can also follow me on Twitter at SwipaCam. I'm also on IG, and I just launched a TikTok. Going to have more great content coming to you at SwipaCam across TikTok, YouTube, and Twitter, and Instagram. So, y'all, definitely look forward to seeing y'all soon.
Awesome, man. Hey, thank you so much for a few minutes of your time. We'll see how this season shakes out. We'll do it again soon, my man.
Absolutely. Appreciate you.
Yes, sir. There we go. SwipaCam, the man himself, been making a lot of noise out there on the Twitter sphere this year, fighting the good fight. Jokic for MVP, Nuggets this, Nuggets that. I love it. Going back and forth. That's the energy we need. Man is the MVP. I mean, we've been talking about it since we're blue in the face about every day. I feel like we do a segment a day about Jokic and the Nuggets. Have to. So, good stuff. Really good conversation with Swipa. Loving that. We'll get him on the show again here soon. But, all right, let's hit a break. I finally found a tweet with every single team in each group for the World Cup. So we will go